All right, hello and welcome to the eVenture family channel. If it's your first time here, please do subscribe. Today, I'm excited to finally be bringing a little bit more in-depth review of our still pretty new Chevy Equinox EV. This is the 2RS trim level. It's a 2024. We've had this a little bit over a month now, put about 750 miles on it, which is really not a lot. And that's because we got this car as a replacement for our Tesla Model Y, and it is basically just my commuting car. So we use it a little bit to go to like the kids' sports activities and stuff. My wife's used it to commute to her office a couple of times, which is quite a bit further, but for the most part, I'm driving about 5 miles a day with this to the train station and back. But I have at least had a chance to take it on the highway a couple times. We've done some like medium type trips with it. And so I've learned a lot about this. I've had a ton of questions about it. I think a lot of people are excited by the Equinox EV because it is now definitely Chevy's, and I guess GM's overall, most affordable EV, with the 1LT trim coming out for 2025, and some of those starting to ship now. And those can be had for like under $35,000. This one is a bit more. I'll get into all the pricing details and stuff when we start talking a little bit more in depth about this. But people are super excited for this, and it is one of, if not the most affordable EVs on the market right now. And you're really getting what I would say is a lot with it. So let's get into all of that. I'll show you all of the features, cool things in here, and talk a little bit about how this compares to some other EVs out there like our old Model Y, the Hyundais that we test drove, and some of the other things that I've been in at this point. So come along and let's drive.
That's right.
All right, so first up, this is, like I said, the 2RS trim. So the trim levels are actually quite a bit confusing, and Chevy has reduced some of that confusion and complexity for the 2025 model year and just gone to the LT and the RS with different options available to kind of customize what you want. But for 2024, they follow this convention where there is the LT and the RS lines. So RS is the sportier one here. With the RS, you get like this blacked out badging. You have the a little bit sportier wheel package here. They're also bigger. These are 21s, and in the LT, I believe they're 19s. And on the inside, we have red and black trim as opposed to the like blue and gray trim on the LTs. So most of those differences stay, although in the LTs for 2025, there is now the option to like get rid of the kind of light blue trims on the inside that not everybody's a fan of. So what the numbers mean are basically some additional features that you get with each of them. So you go up from 1 to 2 to 3. So you get a lot of nice stuff in the 1LT. That's the most affordable one, but you couldn't actually find those really in 2024. So most of what we saw were the 2s, and then every once in a while you'd see one of the 3s. Really the main differences between the I think 2 adds heated seats, 3 adds ventilated seats, and a few other things, but since a lot of that is changing anyway for next year, I'm not going to focus too much on that. But we found that the 2RS was kind of the perfect mix for what I liked with this like sportier look, and also giving us like some of the features and functionality that I liked. I went with it mostly for looks and because it was what was available. Now, overall on the styling here on the exterior, I think it's a pretty good looking car. From the side, it's kind of a little bit like nondescript. I would almost say this is hard even for me to pick out as the Equinox EV when I see one driving down the road, except for like the blue, E-badging on there. The front, at least, is a little bit more distinctive. So the running light bit in here does give it like a little bit more aggressive look, and especially at night when that is lit up, it's a bit easier to tell that this is the electric version. But while it might be a little bit hard to tell from the exterior looks, this is like entirely different from the gas Equinox. So this has got a much longer wheelbase, and it's actually more similar to the size of the Blazer ICE version than it is the Equinox ICE version. And then the Blazer EV is even bigger. So I find this is actually a nice size. It doesn't feel huge, even though it is pretty big. It's got, a decent amount of ground clearance here. I believe it's about, is it 6 inches? Yeah, that seems about right. Not like we're doing off-roading or anything in this, but you know, it doesn't feel massive when we're driving around town here, but it is still quite roomy, and the packaging on the inside is amazing. The rear seat space especially is just kind of mind-blowing. I think that's where most of the space that you get increasing this long wheelbase here kind of went, and then the trunk also is quite big, but we'll take a look at the space in a minute. All right, so as far as pricing goes, it is, there's a big range here in the Equinox EV. So in the 1LT, like I mentioned, that can be had now for under $35,000, and that's before the federal tax credit. So if you are eligible for that, you're looking at maybe being able to spec one, you know, under $30,000, like maybe even considerably below that if you go with like absolutely no options. So that's pretty incredible. This one though, here, this is about $56,000, I believe. For the 2 RS here, and we also have the Super Cruise option in here, which added a little bit. No sunroof, and the black is an included color, so none of those added cost. But you know, that goes up there, but it's pretty much competitive with Model Y. And the more important thing though here is, you know, we didn't buy this, we did a 2-year lease, and here there was not a whole lot that I was like eligible for in terms of, you know, promotions and stuff, but Chevy does roll in the federal tax incentive as part of like the capital cost reduction on this. Or no, sorry, not at capital, that would mean you pay for it. They actually take that like off of the, or increase like the residual by that amount. In addition to that, I signed up for the GM card, which gave like a $500 discount. There was some like EV lease conquest bonuses as well, and so we maximized all of that. We are paying $8,000 total for this over the course of 2 years. I actually did it as an upfront one-pay lease, which helps save a little bit too, but I just think that is absolutely incredible. So I will have this for 2 years for $8,000 out of a $56,000 vehicle. That's amazing. I know not everybody will pay exactly the same, but I don't think I worked all that hard to get it. There wasn't a whole lot that I was uniquely eligible for, and especially if you're coming from like a Bolt, there are some amazing additional like loyalty discounts on this. If your state does any type of EV incentives that can be applied to leases, you could be talking even considerably less than that. I should mention also this is the all-wheel drive. I went with that because it does increase the amount of horsepower available over the front-wheel drive, but the front-wheel drive is even more affordable, and I've heard of people getting those in the 6,000s and 7,000s for a 2 or even 3-year lease, which is just insane. So when I look at that compared to something like a Tesla, this is just totally different. I've not seen any deals on Tesla leases that come even close to that. We were looking at something almost 2x that if we were to go back into another Tesla. So that pricing is basically going to ground, you know, a lot of how I look at this vehicle and how competitive I think it is. Something that affordable, I think that this is just really amazing and like class leading in a lot of ways, at least if you're defining that class based off of the cost, like I would be. All right, so let's look at a couple of things here. So I did mention room being one of the nicest things here. So coming in here, you can see we do have these auto-presenting door handles, which are nice. However, one of the downsides that I found here is there's no phone as a key option available for this. There is a My Chevy app that you can use, and it allows you to see like, you know, overall state of charge of the car, but it is nothing like Tesla or Rivian's apps in terms of like, you know, rapidity of being able to get data or just like seamless integration or anything. So like whenever you open it, you always have to wait a little while for it to refresh the information and stuff, but it is at least nice for being able to look at your state of charge. You can also set the climate control remotely from it, which is nice. I now do that like when I get off the train to get the air conditioning going before I hop in here, but no phone as a key option, so you always have to bring this key fob with you, which for the first like couple of weeks I was always forgetting it, but now I've gotten used to it again, and it just kind of lives in my pocket. It's a fine key fob. I don't know, nice that like I never actually push any buttons on it or use it for anything other than having it in my pocket, but is a little bit less convenient than some of the other EVs out there. There is also a feature here where if you have the key fob in your pocket and stand back here behind the trunk for a few seconds, it will automatically open for you, but I had to turn that off because in our garage, I basically always walk behind the car, and I always forget that I need to leave like a wide berth for it to not do that. So every morning I'd walk past it, it would open up, and I'd have to go and shut it again, and I just got sick of dealing with it. So we shut that back off. As you can see, pretty roomy for what is in many ways not the biggest vehicle out there. So we would categorize this as a compact SUV or a crossover, I guess. Definitely much smaller than something like a Rivian R1S or Kia EV9 or anything like that. One of the smaller EVs out there, but I'd say like this is pretty comparable to Model Y, Ford Mach-E, Hyundai Ioniq 5, those types of things. But I found that the utilization of space in here is actually much better than those. So for example, both my wife and I are, I'm 6'1", she is like 5'9", 5'10", I think. And like, look at just how much leg room I have here. If I put my feet under here, even better. But look at this, I have like, I don't know, 6-7 inches of knee space here, which is awesome. So this is comfortable for adults without a doubt. I've got plenty of headspace here too. And these seats even are on a little bit of a recline, so I find these super comfortable. There's a little bit of bolstering here in the back seats. I don't think I'd want to be in the middle all that long, just because you lose some leg space with the center console there, and it's more of like a bench seat. But these are nice, and I would be totally fine in here for several hours, I would say. I do wish like we had a glass roof. It's an option, but and it's not actually that costly of an option. I think it's about $500, but we had a hard time finding any available with that, and didn't think it was worth like waiting or special ordering for that. But that would help a little bit here, although it might introduce more noise and more difficulty with like keeping the temperature comfortable in here. Speaking of comfortable temperatures, Chevy and I guess all GM vehicles have just the most insane air conditioning. You put on in here and you're like instantly cooled down. It is super nice, although I find I have to set the temperature like much higher in here than I do in any other vehicle, because it gets cold pretty fast. But on the other side, the heated seats and steering wheel definitely warm up fast, so I can get warm pretty quickly too if I need to. Yeah, other than that, space-wise, we've also, of course, got the trunk space here. And so you can see, even with the seats up here, there's a lot of room back here in the trunk. There's also quite nice sub-trunk storage space here. We've got this deep cubby where I keep like our adapters and some of the charging stuff. We've got this spot here for like any, I guess, like road service tools or tire inflation kits if you would have something like that. But I just keep the included mobile charger in there. We've got like a first aid kit and all of the adapters that we travel with. And so one of the awesome things with this now is that this does have access to the Tesla SuperCharger network. I already did a video on actually testing it out and using it, and it worked great. The only thing is this car charges pretty slow on fast chargers, and at Tesla ones especially, you're not getting like the fastest charging rate, so it's not the best road tripper overall. And this does not support plug-in charge on Tesla SuperChargers, so you actually have to activate through either the Tesla app or the My Chevy app, which just adds a little bit of additional friction. It's not bad, but it just makes it a little bit like less good. So I would say overall, like, Tesla supercharging network for this is a great backup option, but it is not the incredible like game changer that it is for other vehicles like Ford and Rivian, maybe quite as much. Although it could be the difference between being able to do a road trip or not, just having access to that additional reliability and more locations with the Tesla superchargers. So I think when we got that did overnight basically make this a much better road tripper. All right, now one other thing on the exterior here when we're talking about kind of space and usability, I think it is a huge miss that there is no frunk here in the Equinox EV. Now, to be fair, we're not really missing it because we have all of that space inside the vehicle itself and in the trunk, but there's room here. They could have done a better job of like packaging this and at least giving you a little space to put like your charging stuff in. So I think that's pretty disappointing, especially for a vehicle that can push up into nearly $60,000. I get it at under 30, but I think, especially with that wide of a range, it would be a very easy thing for them to add here. Just put like a little plastic bin in here, and they could basically do it. There's clearly room. They could have pushed some of this stuff back a little bit, and you could have made like actually a pretty nice frunk in here. So it's a little bit disappointing. Not end of the world, but I think they missed quite a bit on that one. All right, so let's look at the inside here of the Equinox EV. So one of the things I like here is that there is no start-stop button, and you don't need to do anything with the key. You just leave it in your pocket, you get in, and as soon as your butt hits the seat, vehicle is on. And then same thing when you get out, it automatically shuts back off. So I think that's awesome. And it's just like little things like that that I actually think were a big part in convincing me that GM and Chevy really kind of started to understand this EV thing more than I think I had been giving them credit for. So between that and some of the software things in here, I think Chevy actually is doing a really good job in understanding things that make EVs unique and what differences you want in an EV versus an ICE vehicle. And again, I'm not going to say it's all perfect, but there's actually a lot of thought put into some things like that that some of the other manufacturers have not done such a good job with. So I know it's a little thing with start-stop button, but goes a long way to show me maybe some people at GM actually drive EVs and are informing the decisions that are going into Chevy's EV lineup. All right, so a little bit of a software overview here. And I think this is one of the places where the Equinox EV compares really well against some of the other EVs out there, especially in my experience, like the Honda, Kia vehicles. I'd say it's probably pretty close to Ford or even Polestar or Volvo. But the software in here I actually think is pretty good. While I wouldn't say it is as good as a truly ground up built and optimized software stack like Tesla or Rivian have, there's actually a lot of goodness in here. And I know Chevy got a lot of flack for the decision that they would not include CarPlay or Android Auto in here, but I have actually done a video comparing all of these before, and my ultimate decision here was that I actually think it was the right thing for Chevy to do, and this is good enough that you really don't miss those things, or at least I don't. And I do love CarPlay. There are great benefits of it, but I think there are enough other features in here that make up for it, and the experience really is not taking any compromises as a result. All right, so first off, this is a system that is powered by Google Android Auto. Nope, Android Automotive. I always get the names wrong. Android Automotive. And so with that, you have access to a bunch of built-in Google apps and Google services, including the Play Store that you can go to download other Android Automotive apps for media and navigation stuff especially. So if we get in here, you see we have things in here like Google News, YouTube Music. We also have the navigation itself is all powered by is all powered by Google Maps itself, and I'll come back to this. This is actually really good. But beyond that, we can install these third-party ones too. I guess Waze is owned by Google, but anyway, third-party app-ish, kind of like Waze. We've got Spotify, Amazon Music, Pocket Casts. No Apple Music, unfortunately, but that's an Apple decision, not a Google one. But I think these are great. They're really well integrated first-party apps with solid UI here, easy to control navigation and everything, and it all just integrates great. I also love that you have Sirius XM in here. I've gone back to being a big devotee of that. I've even signed up for the year-long discounted subscription now, and I've just been really enjoying that again. So nice to have all of that stuff in here, but all of these customizations options are great. So even though you don't have CarPlay or Android Auto, you have access to at least all of the apps with the exception of Apple Music that I care most about, and even better, you have far better integration with navigation here. So for example, it can actually see what my state of charge is and predict what it'll be as I'm driving. And this also does navigation and routing. So it'll tell me where I need to stop, how long, and everything, which is really nice, and you don't get that through CarPlay or Android Auto, with the exception being in Ford vehicles where they have a deeper integration, but pretty much no other vehicle has that. So yeah, you can see exactly where we're stopping. I have this set to mostly do Tesla ones, but those are all solid stops, and you never stop in more than 30 minutes. Plus, you can even see it integrates with my Google profile and shows the starred places that I've got. So overall, I think the software in here is really solid. It is missing some things that Tesla has, like phone as a key, some of that like deeper integration with the like mapping and routing stuff. It doesn't have like plug and charge with the chargers on Tesla networks, or I think anything other than EVgo. But overall, I think this is quite good. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is Chevy does not have a good track record of doing over-the-air software upgrades. This vehicle is technically capable of them, but so are all Ultium vehicles, and there have been essentially zero over the course of the several years that Ultium vehicles have been out. So like the Hummer hasn't received any, I don't believe, and that's been out the longest, like 3-ish years. And so far we haven't received any on here either. So the capability is there. It's just Chevy does need to prove that they are able to actually push out updates like that for me to have trust in it, you know, to the same degree that Tesla or Rivian are pushing out updates. I mean, check out some of the videos that I've been doing on Rivian software updates lately, but it's just, you know, amazing new feature coming on a monthly basis at this point, adding like totally new capabilities to the vehicle. And, you know, so far at least we're not getting that in here. Now there are at least some customization options that we have here on this driver gauge screen. So I like this one that shows like all of the details of how much energy we are using or regenerating, and like our state of charge and all of that stuff. But you know, there are other ones like this one that kind of focus more on like the, you know, time and stat stuff. We've got navigation full screen here, and then this one with like the heads-up display kind of stuff for adaptive cruise control, the simplified one. So all of that is pretty nice, and apparently I missed the fact that you can actually see charging speed and stuff if you go to the right screen here. So I think that this is quite nice, although it'd be nice to have like more direct customization of this, but I think, you know, pretty good here at least that you have different options. A lot of vehicles don't have the ability to like change anything about this at all. All right, and then looking at the wheel here, you can see we do have Super Cruise, which I am a huge fan of. I've used it a little bit so far, but it does a really solid job of keeping you dead centered in the lane, but it is not the same as Tesla, like where once you have turned it on, it locks the wheel and you can barely like put any, you know, input into it. It actually works much more in partnership with you, where you still have like the ability to kind of, you know, like shift over in the lane if you need to, or like avoid something, and it'll, you know, still stay on and like work with you in that and not just give up and require you to turn it back on. So I really like that. It also does automatic lane changes, and so far at least it's been super solid with that. And I just find that it has been working very reliably. It does only work on pre-mapped roads, but GM is constantly increasing the number of those, and I have found that it is definitely more available here than Rivian's highway assist driver assistance system, which seems to be like really limited in the number of roads, and even like there are certain parts of the road it won't work on and it'll just shut off and stuff. It's expanding too, but I think GM's done a better job of bringing it to more places already. So while it is not as available in every single place and like off highways and stuff like Tesla's autopilot and full self-driving are, I think that it is where it is available, it is very reliable. My experience has been better with this than autopilot for sure, at least in terms of like, you know, letting you kind of work with it. And I also think that it does a better job of like handling curves and things like that too. So I definitely like this one, and I am I guess I'm not paying anything extra for it for like a subscription, since it goes for several years. It goes beyond the life of the 2-year lease that I've got, but you would eventually have to pay like subscription for it. Same thing actually for like the Google stuff in here, but that's 8 years. So I really wouldn't worry too much about that. It is, unless you plan on keeping this vehicle for more than 8 years, but I don't think most people really will be, nor do I think you actually should be, because the tech in these will change so much in the next 8 years that you're probably going to want something newer. So I definitely do recommend leasing a vehicle like this. All right, so like I mentioned, we have not been using this too much like on the highway, so this has been a lot of nearby driving. But just to give an idea here of, I can never actually find this out. There you go, energy info. Yeah, so here is our efficiency. So you don't get anywhere near as much like historical data or the ability to like customize this as you do in Tesla or Rivian. But you can see we've been doing 3.2 miles per kilowatt hour on average, which is a lot better than our Rivian, where we generally get like 2 to 2.5 at best. Although, you know, obviously very different vehicles. And this is not quite as good as what we would get in our Tesla Model Y, which was generally like high 3s to low 4s. But you know, this is not bad. It's not the most efficient vehicle, but you know, we are seeing like a 300 plus mile range with this efficiency. You know, it's been fine to get us around. It would be great if they could do a little bit better on that, but I think part of this is, you know, again, the big wheels here that we have in the RS, they also don't have any sort of like aerodynamic cap on them to improve efficiency. So, you know, I'm fine with this. It is not as it could be, not as good as it could be, but it's not bad by any means either. Now, one thing that is missing from here in terms of like those apps and media availability is any type of video streaming. So one of the things I like in Tesla, and I think Tesla is pretty much the only one that is doing it, is the ability to stream Netflix, Disney Plus, YouTube while you are, you know, stopped and parked and charging, which with kids, that is an absolute necessity and game changer. So Rivian should be getting that soonish, although we've been hearing that's going to be soon for quite a while now, and people are getting pretty antsy about that with Google Cast. But at least as far as we know in here right now, there is no plan to add any type of that. So unfortunately, we are stuck with tablets instead for that. Now, looking at charging and charging speeds for this, I would say this is not a vehicle that you buy for the great charging speed experience. So the maximum charging rate advertised on this is 150 kilowatts. And compared to something like our Rivian R1S, where our peak charging speed is about 215, but on average we stay well above 150, you know, through most of the charging session. Or even our Model Y, where I think we would peak that somewhere around the same, like maybe low 200s, and it would drop off quite a bit, like as you got deeper into the battery pack. But generally that would stay, you know, at least above 100 kilowatts. For this, it is 150 peak, but there are a bunch of caveats with that. So first off, in order to get 150, you can't just use a 150 labeled charging station, because this has incredibly low pack voltage. And so in order to get like those peak charging speeds, you need to maximize your amperage as well. And so this generally operates around 300 volts, a little bit less like dead, a little bit more at top, but nominal is about 288. And so in order to get 150 kilowatts, kilowatts are amps times voltage, you need 500 amps. And so the only places that you actually find 500 amps generally are on the faster 350 kilowatt labeled stations, at least for CCS charging. And at Tesla stations, it is rare to get 500 amps except on some of the more recent V4 builds. But even that, you're generally not going to get 500 amps for the majority of the charging session, because pumping that much current has a lot of resistance, which increases heat, and that is something that gets limited in here quite aggressively. So you actually throttle down from that and get much slower charging speeds. So overall, you're not going to see 150 kilowatts charging in this very often or very long. And from what we've seen so far, I would expect probably something closer to 100 kilowatts for most of the charging session, but you're going to dip below that for a good chunk of it too. So don't expect charging rates anywhere near that, and you're going to see some longer charging times here because of that efficiency on longer road trips. So I would say this does not compare very favorably to most other vehicles in this class for a lot of fast DC charging. Tesla Model Y would do better, or Model 3 would do better too, except for like the absolute cheapest standard range vehicles. But even those, they're just stopping production of those because they were using Chinese produced LFP battery packs. So you're not even going to see those as an option anymore. The Hyundai and Kia vehicles that are built on the eGMP platform, those have 800 volt architectures. They're going to charge so much faster than this and just blow this out of the water. So if fast charging often is a big deal to you, I would look at some of the other options out there, because this is going to be a little bit frustrating. But if you're like me and you're using this primarily for commuting and just periodic road trips, you know, I really wouldn't factor that in all that much. This is going to be fine. Like if you are, you know, most people are probably only fast charging, and especially doing like a long fast charge session from, you know, 20 to 80%, pretty rare and a few times throughout the year. So even for us, like where we like to do a bunch of family road trips, it's not going to be like a major factor for us. And, you know, you're talking like a difference between maybe stopping and charging for 35 to 40 minutes instead of 25 to 30 at absolute most. So not the biggest deal. You know, just gives you a little bit more time to sit and relax and enjoy if you're getting food or something. So I think we focus a little bit too much on that fast DC charging rate. You know, 99% of the time I'm just charging on our at-home charger here, and most people probably are too. And even if you're not, you know, you're talking a couple of extra minutes here or there. If you're using this for like a ride share thing and you're charging every single day, like if you live in an apartment or you just don't have access to at-home charging, yeah, the other options might be a better fit for you. All right, and then in terms of driving, I much prefer the feel of how this handles and drives to our Tesla Model Y. The Tesla Model Y, I've come to find, it is like a pretty harsh ride in there. And while the like instant torque and acceleration are great and it feels pretty sporty, the sacrifices that you make in the suspension and just how harsh the feel is, I don't think are necessarily worth it. So if you care about outright acceleration, a Model Y might be better for you, and I'd say, you know, go for that performance version. If you're considering, even like a person that is looking at a performance version of a Model Y, this is probably not the vehicle for you. The Equinox is fine, but in the front wheel drive version, it is like just barely 200 horsepower. In the all-wheel drive here, I think we get 286, which is just not a lot. It is fine. I find that this is more than capable, you know, when you're taking off from a green light or if you're merging onto the highway or something. But, you know, it is not like that rocket ship feel that you get in some of the more performance-oriented EVs that are out there. But it is more than fine. Go test drive it yourself. See, if you're coming from an ICE vehicle, the torque that you get in here is just still gonna like melt your brain anyway. So I wouldn't worry about it being like unacceptable. It's not gonna, you know, melt your face as much as some of the other like performance EVs out there. But I do really like the ride feel in here. I think these big wheels and the suspension in here are just really solid. If you care a whole lot about like a luxurious kind of wafty feeling suspension or ride, I'd say maybe look actually at the Cadillac Lyriq. I was so impressed with how that feels in rides, and it doesn't even have an air suspension, but it kind of feels like it. And it is a little bit more, but not too much, and it shares a lot of the same stuff here as actually the Blazer, but there's a lot of commonality between the Equinox and the Blazer EVs also. So a lot of similarities in terms of like the software, even like the trim and controls and stuff in here too. All right, one other limitation that I realized I kind of don't like in here is that you do have these driver profiles, but you have to like manually change them here. They are not tied to a key from what I can tell, and they don't control a whole lot of stuff other than like some of the media apps. So like you can have this tied to your specific sign in for Spotify and things like that, but it doesn't like really change the settings or anything like that all that much. And here, at least in the 2RS, we do not have set or what do you call it? Memory for the seat settings, and so every time I come in here after my wife is driven, I have to adjust it again. There's no way to like have that tied into our profile or anything here, so just a little minor annoyance, but something that I really wish that we did have in here. There's also no auto wipers or high beams in here, which a lot of other EVs do have, so kind of wish we had that. We also do not have any type of wireless phone charging in here. There's at least USB-C, which is nice and shows that, hey, this is a modern vehicle. Some others out there, like the Kia and Hyundai ones, are still sticking old USB-A ports in theirs, and I just don't get that. So this at least does feel modern from that. There will be wireless phone charging in here, by the way, for the 2025 model year, so I wouldn't let that be a major factor for you. All right, so this is our Chevy Equinox EV, and in case it's not clear, I love this car. There are some little annoyances here and there. There are some like, I guess, software and tech things that I think could be improved, and unfortunately I just don't have any trust that GM or Chevy are gonna like actively improve those things through over-the-air updates. So, you know, I'm reviewing this based off of what we've got now, because I think, you know, that's what you're gonna get, and it's gonna stay that way for a while. But just, you know, a couple of those little things like driver profiles and some of the other stuff in the software, even having like phone as a key, those would go such a long way to make this like the perfect car. But all of that aside, I love this. It is a great driving car. It is the absolute perfect commuter car for what we need. And, you know, on the periodic road trip, it is definitely a very viable option as well. And especially now getting access to the Tesla supercharging network, like I said, that makes it even more viable for road trips for us now. You've got so much space in here too. It's a great family car. Even with 3 kids and a dog, we've got ample space in here, and I feel like we're less on top of each other in here than we were in our Model Y. So I have no regrets about going from Tesla to Chevy here. And I think, you know, I was so impressed when we first got this on some of the things that Chevy has done here from like a tech perspective. The software in here is awesome. I don't miss not having CarPlay and Android Auto at all. Now granted, we have a Tesla and a Rivian that also haven't had it, so I've gotten quite used to that, but I really don't feel like you're making a lot of sacrifices by not having it here either. And then, you know, just the integration with Google and all of the different like media options and stuff that you have in here, I think are incredible and basically tick all the boxes for me with the exception of Apple Music, but I can live without that. And yeah, it's reintroduced me to my love for Sirius XM. I'm an Alt Nation lover. Let me know down in the comments below your favorite Sirius XM channel, because I do need to branch out a little bit more. I'm already getting sick of same songs all the time. And then I also like that I think Chevy's done a great job here of like exposing some of the EV, you know, details and metrics for the nerds like me in there with, you know, your exact on-demand consumption of kilowatts and regen and stuff, your charging rates and things like that, your efficiency. I'd love it if they could give you even more nerd details like that, but I still think it goes just a long way to show and prove to me that Chevy is maybe less of the stuck in their old ways ICE manufacturer that I thought that they were. And there's some things that show me there are people at Chevy and GM that do actually care about EVs, understand them, and understand the use cases and things that make them unique. And I really wouldn't have thought I'd be standing here saying that even like a year ago. So kudos to Chevy for not only doing that, but making a car that is fun to drive, feels great, does not feel cheap at all, and I just think just knocks it out of the park. So, all right, getting to my final recommendations here. Would I recommend that you go out and buy a Chevy Equinox EV right now? No. That's just because I don't think you should buy one. What you should do is, like I did, lease one. So with how fast the EV industry is moving right now, and just like the pricing and stuff, I think you're so much better getting a great lease deal like we did, or even better one if you're eligible for additional things. That kind of tackles a bunch of things. Like, yes, at the end of it, you're not, you know, going to have the option, or I guess you do have the option to buy it out. So you are putting some theoretical equity into it, although not as good as if you just, you know, were to finance it. But with a lease like this, you are basically mitigating yourself against the risk of a whole bunch of things changing in the EV industry over the next few years, and things adapting and evolving so much. So I think a 2 or 3 year lease is the perfect amount of time right now just to wait and see how things go. And, you know, worst case, if you love this, you can at least get into a newer one with some, you know, additional features and stuff in 2 or 3 years from now as they keep refining and improving this. Plus software and stuff is going to keep changing so much too. You want to be in a newer one, I think. So I would absolutely suggest that. I recommend this over a Tesla. I mean, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I like this much better than our Model Y. Part of it was, you know, we kind of just got sick of having a Tesla for 6 years almost. Another part of it was all of Elon and the associated antics there. One day I will make a more dedicated video on why we decided to move on from Tesla, but at this point at least, this was a great option for us, and I felt like it was very competitive, and especially for the price that we're paying, a no-brainer for us to have the option to try something new and experience a little bit different side of the EV lifestyle. And at the end of it, in 2 years, if you don't like this, there's gonna be plenty of other options out there as well. So anyway, let me know what you think. I tried to cover as much as I could in a relatively short period of time. I am sure that there are other questions and things I didn't get into. I'm going to continue to bring the story of this Equinox EV to the channel here, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of that. We'll get a lot more into, you know, road tripping this, charging it, more of a long-term ownership perspective with service and other things like that in the future too. I'll definitely do, you know, more hands-on driving experiences as well. But for now, loving this vehicle. Let me know if there are things that you want to learn more about with it. And with that, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you out there for another electric adventure soon.